Today, we're going to dive into one of the most, truly dramatic stories in the startup world. The meteoric rise and the absolutely catastrophic fall of BYJU'S, a company that was once the shining star of India's education technology scene. At its absolute peak, back in 2022, this was the company's valuation, $22 billion. Let that sink in. It made BYJU'S the undisputed poster child for Indian startups, a real symbol of global ambition and massive success. And yet, just 2 years later, that empire had all but crumbled. So, the big question is, right, how does a company fly that high only to fall so hard and so incredibly fast? Let's unpack the story, starting from the very beginning. To really understand the fall, we first have to get a handle on that incredible ascent. And it all started not in some fancy boardroom, but in a classroom. The story really kicks off back in 2011 with Byju Raveendran and his wife, Divya Gogolnath. Raveendran wasn't just a teacher. He was a genuinely gifted one, the kind of person who could make really complex stuff feel simple. They realized his talent could be scaled way, way beyond a single classroom. And the growth was, well, it was truly meteoric. The company gets founded in 2011, but the real explosion, the thing that changed everything, was their learning app launch in 2015. Just 3 years after that, boom, it's a unicorn. And by 2022, it hits that staggering peak valuation we talked about. So what was the secret sauce? Well, it was kind of like a perfect storm of factors. Their timing was fantastic, catching that huge wave of smartphone adoption in India. The product itself was really strong. With engaging video lessons, they tapped into this massive market of parents, all anxious for their kids to succeed. And they just expanded like crazy, both into new places and by buying up other companies. By 2022, BYJU'S wasn't just a successful company. It felt more like a cultural phenomenon. It seemed absolutely, completely unstoppable. And this was the narrative, right? Their whole story. And for a while, it was totally believable. Here's this company that went from a simple coaching business to a global powerhouse that was genuinely changing how millions of students learned. The story was just intoxicating. And they were not afraid to show it off. Sponsoring the Indian cricket team, that makes you a household name across the entire country. And then sponsoring the FIFA World Cup, that's a massive statement about your global ambition. They were playing in the big leagues, for sure. But here's the thing. Even at the absolute height of its power, the foundation was starting to show some very, very serious cracks. Beneath that shiny exterior of global sponsorships and insane valuations, a totally different story was unfolding in the company's books. The warning signs were there, if you knew where to look. And right here is where the public image and the financial reality just completely split apart. Yeah, revenue was growing, but their losses were just exploding. In a single fiscal year, their losses ballooned to over 4,500 crore rupees. To put that in perspective for you, that's a jump from about $30 million to over $550 million in losses in 1 year. That is a massive, flashing red flag. And this is the crucial point. It wasn't just one thing that went wrong. It was a perfect storm of really big problems. The finances were a mess. There were serious questions about their accounting and governance. Their whole strategy of just buying up other companies was incredibly expensive, and complaints were piling up about their aggressive sales tactics. On top of all of that, the whole era of easy money for tech startups was coming to a screeching halt. And then, what started out as cracks became a complete and total collapse. All those different pressures just converged, and the company began to unravel at a speed that was honestly shocking. The speed of the collapse was just as staggering as the rise had been. In 2022, they're the champion, worth $22 billion. By early 2024, the company's facing insolvency, with a valuation that was, for all intents and purposes, zero. The fallout was just devastating. Thousands and thousands of employees were laid off. The company was drowning in legal battles and unpaid debt. Their app even got temporarily kicked off Google Play. Key auditors and board members resigned in droves, and then a U.S. court flagged a fraudulent transfer of over $500 million. It was a complete breakdown of trust in operations, the whole shebang. This headline, it really just says it all, doesn't it? The journey from the absolute top of the mountain to the very bottom of the valley was complete, and it was nothing short of catastrophic.
But a story like this is more than just drama. It's a huge cautionary tale. So let's break down the crucial lessons this teaches all of us about business, about growth, and about governance.
So, what are the key takeaways here? First, sustainable growth is so much more valuable than just reckless expansion. Second, strong governance and transparency. They're not optional, they are absolutely non-negotiable. Third, a market boom will not last forever, so you better plan for the downturn. Fourth, you have to be smart about growth. Just buying companies is not a substitute for a sound business model. And finally, none of it matters without strict financial discipline. And this is the question every single entrepreneur and business leader should be asking themselves after hearing this story. Is the growth you're chasing real and sustainable? Or is it just a house of cards waiting for the slightest gust of wind? So what's next for BYJU'S? Well, the dust is kind of settled, but the future remains incredibly uncertain. Here's a quick snapshot of where things stand today. The company is in a formal insolvency process. Key assets are probably going to be sold off to pay their debts. The brand name is severely damaged, though, yeah, people still recognize it. And honestly, its biggest legacy might just be serving as a massive warning to the entire tech industry. If there is any path to survival, and that's a big if, it is an incredibly steep one. It would require a complete top-to-bottom rebuild of trust, of governance, and of the fundamental way the business actually makes money. It is a monumental task. Ultimately, if there's one single word that just hangs over this entire story, it's hubris, that excessive pride and self-confidence that can blind even the smartest people to the dangers that are right there in front of them. It's a classic theme, not just in business, but in so many tragic falls from grace. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at the whole story, what do you think was the fatal flaw? Was it that obsession with growth at all costs, the complete breakdown in governance and oversight, or maybe a simple failure to adapt when the world changed around them? It's a complex answer, for sure, with lessons in there for all of us.